Welcome to the deep dive. Imagine, if you will, a country where the citizens are wealthier than they have ever been in their entire history.
Right, and we're talking about a place where the air and water are cleaner than they've been in a century.
Exactly. The education system functions with just, near flawless precision. And the healthcare infrastructure is so robust that infant mortality is essentially a statistical anomaly.
I mean, from the outside looking in, it looks like a utopia. It looks like the absolute pinnacle of human societal engineering.
It really does. But underneath the surface,
hmm
quietly ticking away in the background, there is this demographic time bomb that threatens to collapse that entire system.
Yeah, it's like you're looking at this magnificent, towering skyscraper clad in gleaming glass. But if you actually look closely at the blueprints, you realize it's been built on a shifting tectonic fault line.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And the fascinating thing about that fault line is that it isn't a secret, right?
No, not at all. It's fully documented. The architects of this society know it's there, but the solutions require these structural changes that are incredibly difficult to implement.
Which is exactly what we are dissecting today for you. We are taking a magnifying glass to an entire nation.
And not just any nation, but really one of the most economically fascinating case studies of the post-war era, which is the Republic of Austria.
Yeah, and our source material today isn't, some rambling historical biography or a politician's memoir. It's this meticulously designed, highly concentrated academic presentation blueprint.
A literal 15-slide deck. And what stands out immediately about the source material is the methodology behind its design.
Oh, absolutely. The aesthetic of this blueprint tells you exactly how you are supposed to engage with it.
Right. It is entirely stripped of spin. I mean, there are no 3D graphics designed to exaggerate a trend line.
No bright, alarming colors meant to trigger an emotional response either. It's on a pure white background.
Exactly, a pure white background. And it relies entirely on flat, two-dimensional information graphics.
Yeah, using these really muted, low-saturation Miranda blues and deep grays and subtle greens.
It is pure objective data. Even the title slide, slide 1, is just minimalist typography, bold black title on the left, and this abstract geometric outline of Austria in gray-blue on the right.
Right, and the title is Multidimensional Assessment of Austria's Socioeconomic and Sustainable Development, 1960 to 2023.
It's clinical. It's an assessment designed to communicate profound, complex truths without relying on a charismatic speaker to just, wave their hands and distract you.
The data has to drive the narrative here. And our mission today is to figure out how a nation actually engineers this ultimate model.
What economists call a high-income, high-welfare, low-carbon society.
Exactly. But more importantly, we want to look at the raw data to reveal those hidden vulnerabilities, that fault line beneath the skyscraper.
So let's unpack this. The core of this analysis rests on 4 main pillars, which are laid out right away on slide 2.
Yeah, the executive summary slide. It's this neat 4-grid layout with these low-saturation icons. What are the 4 pillars?
First, you have economic resilience, which is the actual wealth generation. Second is structural transformation, meaning how the economy shifted from farms to services.
Right.
Third is human capital, all about education and health. And finally, sustainability, how they manage carbon and energy.
And these aren't isolated silos, right? They are deeply interconnected systems.
Absolutely. To understand any advanced post-industrial democracy, you have to look at how these 4 pillars interact over a 60-year timeline.
Okay, let's start with that first pillar, economic resilience. Because if you want to understand Austria, you first have to look at its wallet and then look at its calendar.
I love that framing. Let's open the wallet first. Slide 4 tracks the gross domestic product per capita.
And the visualization here is striking. It's this smooth line chart in that Miranda blue.
Mm-hmm.
And it's annotated with these little dots and vertical gray dashed lines at key milestones.
Right, like breaking the $10,000, $30,000, and $50,000 marks.
Yeah. And the trajectory starts in the 1960s, where the per capita GDP is sitting under 1,000 current U.S. dollars.
Which is wild to think about now.
It really is. But fast forward through the decades, and that number doesn't just grow. It compounds relentlessly.
It pushes well over $50,000 in recent years. And if you adjust for purchasing power parity,
Meaning what that money can actually buy in the real world.
exactly, it pushes well over $64,000. But the data takes that a step further by showing us the nature of that growth.
What do you mean by the nature of it?
Well, look at the curve itself. In macroeconomics, you rarely see a long-term growth curve that is this incredibly smooth.
Right, because the world is usually chaotic.
Exactly. Think about the global chaos between 1960 and 2023. You had the oil shocks of the 70s, the Soviet collapse right on Austria's doorstep.
The dot-com bust, the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah, the European sovereign debt crisis, and a massive global pandemic. For a nation's wealth to remain a smooth upward climb through all of that proves an incredible resistance to external shocks.
It's like a ship equipped with the most advanced stabilizing fins ever invented. The waves are crashing, banks are failing elsewhere, but the people inside barely spill their coffee.
That's a great way to picture it. And how do they achieve that? It implies the underlying macroeconomic policies are highly synchronized.
Right.
You have independent inflation targeting by the central banks, but also this highly formalized system of social partnership.
So unions and employers negotiating together.
Exactly. Labor unions, employers, and the government negotiate collectively. So during a shock, instead of mass layoffs or strikes, they negotiate temporary hour reductions to keep employment stable.
Wow, so it absorbs the shock at the institutional level before it ruins an individual's livelihood.
Spot on. And we see the ultimate proof of that stability in the microdata regarding financial inclusion.
Oh yeah, the data here is almost hard to believe. Account ownership at a financial institution for anyone over 15 is effectively total, over 99%.
It's virtually identical for men and women, rich and poor. Every single person is plugged into the matrix.
Why is that specific metric so important for economic resilience?
Because it's a profound indicator of institutional trust and systemic efficiency. When 99% of adults are banked, capital moves with zero friction.
So people can save securely, businesses can run payroll easily.
And, crucially, the government can collect taxes efficiently and distribute welfare instantly. Imagine issuing emergency stimulus checks in a country where 30% of people are unbanked.
Yeah, the logistics would be a nightmare.
Exactly. In a fully banked society, it happens overnight. It completely eliminates the friction of a cash-based shadow economy.
It's the absolute bedrock that allows a high-income society to function without leaking value. But this brings us to the massive but in the room.
A fault line under the skyscraper.
Yes, the wallet looks incredibly thick, but we have to look at the demographic calendar. Slide 3 shows us the calendar, and it is flashing a bright red warning light.
Yes, the old age dependency ratio chart. It's a dark gray, single-axis area chart, and the designer literally put a red dotted circle around the massive spike at the end.
It looks like a hockey stick. It's an unprecedented spike. Let's clearly define this ratio for you, the listener, because understanding it is key to the whole global economy.
Right. The old age dependency ratio is basically the number of older people, usually over 65, compared to the working age people, 15 to 64.
A strict ratio of dependence to providers. And the data shows a climb from around 1.5% in the post-war era to a staggering 31.6% recently.
And if you factor in kids under 15, the total age dependency ratio pushes well over 53%.
Let that sink in. For roughly every 2 people going to a job and generating taxable income, you have more than 1 person who is not in the labor force.
They're either in school or increasingly drawing a pension and using highly expensive health care. It's the ultimate stress test for a modern welfare state.
I always like to visualize this with an analogy. Imagine you and your friends go on a multi-day group hike in the Alps. Everyone has a heavy backpack with collective supplies.
Tents, food, all that.
Right. Early on, everyone is young, healthy, carrying their own weight. That's your mid-20th century economy. But over time, people twist ankles or just get too old to carry their packs.
So they hand their bags to the remaining healthy hikers.
Exactly. As the hike goes on, fewer people are carrying heavier backpacks, trying desperately to support the group. Eventually, they're going to collapse under the strain.
That is a perfect representation of fiscal infrastructure. The backpacks are the tax burden needed to fund public pensions, universal health care, and elderly care.
It forces the economy into a really tight corner, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You only have a few levers to pull. Raise taxes on young workers, making their backpacks heavier, cut benefits to the elderly, leaving hikers behind.
Or bring in massive amounts of young immigrants to recruit new hikers.
Or completely revolutionize human productivity through automation, so one worker generates the wealth of 3. If you don't do one of those, the economy stagnates.
That beautiful GDP curve just flatlines, which sets up the central mystery of this deep dive. If the workforce is shrinking relative to retirees, what work are the remaining people actually doing?
How are they generating enough value to keep the machine running? That leads us directly into the second pillar, structural transformation.
Slide 5 maps this out brilliantly with a 100% stacked bar chart.
Right, showing data at 5-year intervals to keep the axis clean. And there are these downward gray arrows highlighting the shrinkage.
The shrinkage of agriculture and heavy industry. Agriculture went from over 5% of GDP value added down to barely 1.2% today.
And industrial employment share steadily declines too. Meanwhile, the service sector just swallows the rest of the chart.
This is textbook post-industrial shift. But what does services actually mean here? It's not just retail, right?
No, not at all. When an economy matures this much, the engine pivots to high-value premium services. Global finance, management consulting, specialized software architecture.
Advanced engineering design.
Exactly. The true value lies in the intellectual property and patents, not the raw materials. When a nation hits $50,000 per capita, they're selling specialized expertise.
It sounds fantastic. Cleaner, high-tech, doesn't break your back like coal mining. But I have to push back here.
Go for it.
If the economy is so remarkably stable, why does slide 6 explicitly highlight a massive, volatile spike in youth unemployment?
Ah, the dual-axis chart.
Yeah. The light gray line shows total employment is totally flat and stable, but the dark blue line for youth unemployment, 15 to 24-year-olds, jumps wildly. The slide even circles those spikes with a red oval.
That is a structural feature of highly regulated European economies known as the dual labor market. It's a very real, often invisible vulnerability.
How do they work?
Well, the primary labor market has older established workers on permanent contracts. Because of strong union protections, it's incredibly expensive to lay them off during a downturn.
So their jobs are basically fortresses.
Exactly. So if you're a CEO during a recession and you must cut costs, who takes the hit? The young people.
Because they're on temporary contracts.
Right. They're on fixed-term contracts or trying to get entry-level jobs. They become the shock absorbers for the whole macroeconomic system.
Wow.
Companies don't fire the older workers. They just don't renew the 6-month contracts of the 23-year-olds, and they freeze new hiring.
So total employment stays stable, but youth unemployment spikes. It's the last in, first out principle on a national scale.
The young workers are subsidizing the job security of the older generations by taking all the risk.
What does that do to a generation? Bouncing between gigs or unemployment in your early 20s has to leave a mark.
Economists call it scarring effects. If young people languish in unemployment, they miss critical training. Their skills atrophy.
And their lifetime earning potential drops.
Exactly. They delay buying homes, delay starting families, which ironically worsens the demographic crisis we just talked about.
Because we desperately need them to be high-earning individuals to carry those heavy backpacks.
Right. If the dual labor market stunts them, the math breaks down.
So we have a generational divide. But slide 7 reveals another massive structural divide, this one about gender.
The tornado chart. Left side for women, right side for men.
Yes, back-to-back bars. And the data here is a real wait what moment. It presents this frustrating paradox.
A massive disconnect between preparation and utilization.
Exactly. Education completion rates are perfectly equal. In fact, women actually lead in many higher education metrics.
The policy goal of equal opportunity in the classroom is completely achieved. The playing field is level there.
But then you look at actual workplace outcomes. The female part-time employment rate soared to nearly 65%.
2/3 of employed women working part-time.
While male part-time employment is just around 36%. Why is that gap so massive?
It represents the unfinished business of the structural transformation. Equal opportunity hasn't translated to equal outcomes, especially in STEM or senior management.
And it's not necessarily overt discrimination at the hiring desk, right?
No, it's about the systemic architecture of how society organizes family life versus corporate life.
Let's unpack this part-time trap. Because 65% doesn't happen by accident. What does it look like for a family in Vienna or Salzburg?
It's a mix of tax structures, cultural expectations, and childcare infrastructure. Traditionally, the school system ran on a half-day schedule. Kids might be dismissed at noon.
Oh, wow. So someone has to be home.
Right. And full-day childcare for infants can be structurally unavailable in some regions. So when a family has a child, the math forces someone to reduce their hours.
And due to cultural norms or men having slightly higher starting salaries, the default is almost always the mother.
Exactly. She shifts to the part-time track. And once you step onto the part-time track, you step off the leadership track.
Because the corporate architecture is demanding.
Yeah.
You can't be a CEO or a lead engineer working 20 hours a week and leaving at 1 p.m.
It creates a motherhood penalty, trapping highly educated women in mid-level roles. From a macroeconomic perspective, it's a catastrophic misallocation of resources.
Because,
Right, but the economy only extracts a fraction of their potential productivity. It's like buying a fleet of Formula One race cars and only driving them in school zones.
that is a brilliant way to put it. Okay, let's summarize the board here. We have an aging population, so fewer workers,
Young people bearing economic volatility, facing scarring effects.
and highly educated women trapped in part-time roles. The labor pool is getting squeezed from all sides.
Which means the nation cannot afford a single drop of wasted potential. Every citizen must operate at their absolute highest capacity.
And that leads us to the third pillar, human capital. How do you survive globally without a massive, cheap labor force?
You build a fortress, an economic fortress defended by a moat of human capital. And slides 8 and 12 show exactly how this moat is constructed.
Slide 8 is this step-line chart showing primary education completion rates practically glued to the 100% baseline. It never drops.
Universal baseline education is a non-negotiable fact of life there.
And they back it up with cash. Education expenditure is a relentless 5 to 5.5% of the gross national income year after year.
It is the ultimate patient capital. You don't see the economic return on primary education for 20 years.
A politician funding that will be out of office long before that kid pays their first income tax.
Exactly. But it's the absolute prerequisite. You can't build a high-tech service economy on semi-literacy.
But slide 12 is where it gets really interesting. It's this minimalist, dark gray bar chart tracking scientific journal publications.
With those thin little arrows connecting the years to show the growth slope.
Right. And the growth is almost exponential. The volume of peer-reviewed papers and R&D patents has doubled and tripled over the last 2 decades.
This is the core reactor of the Austrian economic engine. Because remember, they can't compete globally on price. Austrian labor is expensive.
High minimum wage, extensive benefits, mandated vacation time.
So if they can't be the cheapest, they have to be the best. They compete on innovation and extreme specialization.
High-intensity knowledge production is what allows them to dominate high-end manufacturing and precision medical devices.
It's the moat. In medieval times, you dug a trench with water and spikes to protect the castle. Today, your moat is made of intellectual property.
Patents, academic research, highly trained workers, skills that can't be replicated by a cheaper factory across the world.
But an intellectual moat requires relentless, massive investment. If knowledge production slows down, the moat dries up, competitors reverse engineer your processes, and the fortress is breached.
Right, but human capital isn't just about knowledge. It's about being physically capable of using it. You need a healthy population.
Which brings us to slide 9, one of the most profoundly moving data sets in the whole assessment.
The infant mortality rate.
Yeah.
It's a scatter plot, x-axis time, y is infant mortality. There's a thick gray trend line pointing down with a black arrow.
And it shows an absolute cliff drop from over 30 deaths per 1,000 live births in the mid-century, plunging down to around 2.4 to 2.8 today.
A near eradication of early life loss. It's globally elite.
It's a medical victory, obviously, but sociologists consider it the most sensitive proxy for overall systemic competence.
Because an infant is so vulnerable, they rely entirely on the systems around them.
Exactly. To hit 2.4 per 1,000, you can't just build a few shiny hospitals. You need a flawless chain reaching every citizen.
Universal prenatal care, universal health insurance.
Pristine water quality, municipal sanitation, robust paid parental leave so parents can actually care for newborns.
And an educated populace that understands modern hygiene. That single data point proves dozens of public systems are synchronized perfectly.
And from an economic view, it creates a profound invisible dividend, life security.
How does it boost the GDP, though?
When citizens trust their kids will survive and a medical emergency won't bankrupt them, societal anxiety drops. This psychological security changes behavior.
They plan for the long term.
Right. A young person will invest a decade in higher education or risk starting a tech business because they know a massive safety net exists. It aligns personal goals with national growth.
Wow. Okay, so we've got the wallet, the demographic time bomb, the labor market, and the human capital moat. Now let's look at the physical world.
The fourth pillar, sustainability.
This challenges an old ironclad law of economics. The assumption used to be simple. Wealth equals carbon. As nations get richer, they consume more oil and pollute more.
But slide 10 introduces the holy grail of modern development, green decoupling.
The chart has two intersecting lines, a blue line for GDP going steadily up and a gray line for carbon intensity going sharply down.
And they put a hollow circle right at the intersection, labeled historical decoupling.
The economy grows, but emissions drop. It looks like a miracle. But I've played devil's advocate. Is this real?
What do you mean?
Is it real decoupling, or did they just offshore all their dirty manufacturing? Are they just importing their carbon-heavy steel and fast fashion from halfway across the world?
That is the exact right question. It's the pollution heaven hypothesis. Do rich countries get green, or do they export their smog?
Right, keep the alpine air clean while global emissions stay the same.
Well, yes, they absolutely import manufactured goods from carbon-intensive grids. Shifting to services inherently outsources some physical pollution.
So it's just greenwashing on a national scale.
Not entirely. The data is nuanced. Total domestic carbon emissions, even excluding forestry accounting variables, are strictly controlled and falling.
So they were making absolute reductions domestically.
Exactly. The domestic energy shift is genuine. The decoupling is real within their borders, even with the global trade asterisk.
And slide 11 proves that domestic shift. It's a gauge chart. Deep blue fills the 60% mark, and there's a large percentage right in the center.
60 to 70% of their total electricity comes from renewable sources?
Massive hydroelectric power, wind, and solar. And 100% of the population has access to clean fuels for cooking and heating.
No one is burning raw wood in their kitchen to survive winter. But here's the fascinating dual benefit. It's obviously vital for the environment.
Right, fighting climate change.
But from a hard-nosed macroeconomic view, this green purity is a geopolitical shield.
A shield against global fossil fuel markets.
Exactly. Think about a nation relying entirely on imported oil and gas. A conflict in the Middle East or a pipeline dispute in Eastern Europe triggers massive inflation instantly.
Energy costs spike, factories can't pay overhead, consumer utility bills skyrocket. That smooth GDP line would crash.
But if 70% of your power comes from rivers in your own mountains,
You're insulated. The wind doesn't care about foreign policy.
the rivers don't set embargoes, your baseline energy costs remain stable. It's a ruthless, highly effective strategy for national security and economic resilience.
The ultimate self-reliance. But you can't build all this in a vacuum. You need an architecture to hold it together.
Which brings us to the fifth thematic section, the invisible architecture of trust and trade.
Slide 13 maps domestic architecture with a translucent light blue hexagon on a radar chart.
It measures the worldwide governance indicators, or WGI, rule of law, government effectiveness, corruption control.
And Austria consistently ranks in the 90th to 95th percentiles globally. World-class governance. What does that actually feel like on the ground?
High institutional trust acts as an invisible lubricant for the economy. Imagine trying to run a tech startup in a 50th percentile low-trust environment.
I imagine it's full of friction.
Completely.
Yeah.
You spend money on private security because police are unreliable. You bribe officials just to get permits.
If a supplier breaches a contract, the courts take 10 years to hear it.
Every interaction is risky and slow. It's like driving a sports car with the parking brake pulled all the way up. You burn fuel but go nowhere.
But in the 95th percentile,
The parking brake is released, transaction costs plummet, contracts are honored, patents are defended, you don't pay bribes, you pay taxes, and you get functioning roads in return.
that invisible trust attracts foreign capital and retains top-tier talent. They won't stay if institutions are failing.
Exactly. Now look outward. Slide 14 is about deep globalization, a smooth line chart tracking trade openness.
With a horizontal gray dashed line right at the 50% mark as a threshold. And Austria's data line lives way, way above that.
They have massive spikes in air transport freight and international passengers, extreme connectivity.
Is that a choice or a necessity?
It's mandatory for survival.
Yeah.
A small Central European economy doesn't have the domestic population to drive growth internally. You can't just sell software to yourselves.
Right. Global supply chains are the absolute lifeblood. Import raw materials, add immense value with your human capital, and export premium products at a markup.
Their whole wealth trajectory relies on open borders and low tariffs.
Which creates a paradox. They are insulated from energy shocks, but totally exposed to global trade shocks. A blocked shipping canal hits them violently.
It's the tightrope walk of the modern globalized economy. You trade self-sufficiency for incredible wealth, but accept the vulnerability of deep integration.
Okay, we've unpacked the whole blueprint. Slide 15 is the conclusion. 3 plain text columns with minimalist icons. An hourglass, a leaf, and a chip.
A masterclass summary. They built a high-income, high-welfare, low-carbon society. But it explicitly outlines 3 massive existential challenges moving forward.
The pressures on the fault line. Challenge 1. The hourglass. Demographic adaptation.
They have to innovate policies to ease the old-age dependency ratio pressure, probably highly unpopular moves like delaying the retirement age.
Or leaning on tech to increase young worker productivity. Challenge 2. The leaf. Deep greening.
The first 70% of renewable energy was easy. The final 30% heavy industry, long-haul transport requires fundamentally changing how people live and build.
And challenge 3. The chip. Maintaining the tech moat. As the developing world builds universities, Austria must relentlessly turn academic research into commercial dominance.
They have to invent the patented technologies of the next century to remain irreplaceable.
If they fail at any of these, the model fractures. So what does this mean for you listening to this?
Right, it's not just about Austria. This data is a mirror for any organization, corporation, or individual navigating the 21st century.
What's your demographic trajectory? Are you in a dual labor market? What is your human capital moat?
And that concept of the intellectual moat brings up one final, profound question not explicitly on these graphs.
What is it?
We established this entire model relies on a highly educated workforce producing premium knowledge work. How will this model fare in the explosive age of artificial intelligence?
Wow. That is the ultimate wildcard. We just spent an hour saying human intellect is the ultimate defense.
Exactly. Is a society relying on white-collar services and pure knowledge production uniquely positioned to harness AI to solve its labor shortage? Can AI be the missing workers carrying the heavy backpacks?
Or is it uniquely vulnerable?
Right. If AI can write flawless code, draft legal briefs, and perform the premium services that justify a $50,000 GDP, does the intellectual moat evaporate?
Is the highly paid knowledge worker going to become the agricultural worker of the 21st century? Just automated away.
It's a real possibility, a new kind of invisible industrial revolution.
That is a chilling thought. If intellect is commoditized for fractions of a cent, what happens? I invite you, the listener, to deeply ponder that. How will your moat hold up to the AI stress test?
Historical data shows us how the skyscraper was built, but it can't predict what happens when the ground beneath you fundamentally changes.
The past is perfectly clear, but the future remains as murky and thrilling as ever. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.